Tish makes me cry. Yeah, Tish, my dad is a mechanic too. So, on the west side of town. Wrong one. How about this one? Yay, okay. And then Steve makes me blush with all kinds of lies, but that's kind of par for the course. It's okay. It's all right. They're good lies. They're good lies. They're just a little bit exaggerated. I did not fling blood on that crowd, except maybe poetically. Right? I just threatened them to do so. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you, Presidenta Diana, TIL Council, members of the TIL, for this award. It's kind of hard for me to believe that I'm up here at this podium when I'm standing in this room full of amazing writers, so many of you out there that are incredible artists of the written word, crafters of thought and vision, of passion and dreams, of understandings and entire universes created on the pages of your writings. There are so many people out there tonight that I admire so much and of whom I'm in so much awe. In fact, I was really truly shocked when TIL informed me that I would be receiving this award. I almost didn't make the meeting. Diana kept calling and asking if I was coming in person or on Zoom, and I kept telling her, well, I hadn't decided yet. It had been a busy month full of deadlines. I wasn't sure I wanted to drive out of town to the meeting that Saturday, but finally I told her I'd join them on Zoom. And when at the last minute, my neighbor, only 10 minutes down the road or so, and resident TIL senior, elder, and patron saint of all things writerly, Bob Flynn, couldn't get his computer to connect to the Zoom, I offered to go pick him up, drive him to my house, and we could connect to the Zoom at my place. So I was a little late getting to the meeting. And when they told me who they'd picked to receive Lifetime Achievement, I almost asked, could you say that again? In fact, on the way back to drop Bob Flynn off at his house after the Zoom, I asked him something along the lines of, did that really happen? Or are they just like shooting the bull, you know, talking about stuff? And he informed me it was a done deal and I was going to have to accept the fact. But I see y'all's faces here tonight. And I see people that have a deep respect for communication. So many writers doing heroic and significant work in this struggling and conflicted world of bannings and silencings, assertions of post-truth reality, and artificial fabrications, divisiveness, and inhumanity, that it's truly a very humbling moment to be recognized by this group of dedicated writers. I also feel that the selection of this barrio kid with such a non-traditional career path as I have represents a recognition of the power of the printed word, the spoken word, the performed word, and the invented word. As a writer who has chosen not to stay within the borders of one genre or one language or even one target age audience, I feel it's a recognition of those who choose to go beyond borders, to create new paths, new interlanguages, and to empower readers of all ages and all backgrounds to hear their own voices and their own realities reflected in the universality of the human story. You see, my native language, and my favorite language still, is Tex-Mex, a melding of the two languages of my social, cultural, and historical heritage. As children, we didn't consider it a melding. It was all one big super language, right? With edges that reflected different parts of our realities and colors that expressed different facets of this diverse world we lived in. It wasn't till we started school that we would realize that half of our super language was automatically against state law, and that we were automatically little outlaws, forbidden to pronounce our names correctly, and punished and paddled and forced to undergo indignities for transgressions of which we were not even aware. But 12 years later, in my senior year of high school, when the law outlawing Spanish language was finally removed from state law books, and with the creative explosion of the Chicano literary movement, we could finally read and write and celebrate literature in my native language, laughing at translanguaging inventions like knock knock, who's there, chata, chata who, chata door, or doubling the alliteration possibilities by calling the moon a vanilla, canela crescent. Or we could publish in that fusion native language, even if it meant gathering on Cecilio Garcia Camarillo's kitchen floor with a small printer he had bought by pawning his sofa, and telling Max Martinez, hey, you were an English major, Max? You write the blurb for this book, whatever a blurb is, pero dicen que you have to have one on the back so you write it, and asking Mia, hey, can you draw some art stuff for the front cover? Or Cesar Augusto Martinez, hey, will you take an author photo of us? You seem to be kind of good with that camera. In that joyously inventive world where we felt that if we could publish our own books in our own language, anything in the universe was possible. We would then meld Spanish to English to Nahuatl, the language of the Aztecs. We would have trilingual contests where a young 20-something Juan Felipe Herrera, yes, the later U.S. poet laureate, would add que loco to his trilingual poem and therefore win the contest. It was adventurous, intoxicating, it had infinite possibilities, and it spurred all kinds of bold ventures into creating new words, new formats and styles, new fusions of theater and poetry, or of fiction and folklore and song. My poetry, I was told, was too Chicana. Actually, they said Chicano. It's just too Chicano, it's too theatrical, it's too performance. It's not at all the visual upon visual intricacy of the East Coast poetry of the United States. But I kept wanting my poetry to be auditory, not visual. I wanted it performed in the voices of our people, the voices I had grown up hearing literature in. Shortly after, many years after that, after Curandera was published, I received a reaction from Alex Haley, who said he loved it. He read the whole book the night he received it, and it reminded him of the Africanist poet. What was his name? Said Alex Haley. Oh yes, Leopold something. Sédar Senghor, president of Senegal, poet president of Senegal. But Alex Haley said he loved it. He said it was world-class literature. You see, our Chicano movement poets in the 1970s and very early 80s were self-trained, theatrical, experimental, and drunk with liberation, infused with the determination to achieve civil rights on all fronts: racial, cultural, national origin, sexual, gender identity, socioeconomic. It spilled into every corner of our creativity, and it ingrained itself into our identity. When people asked me who were the writers that had most influenced me, I cited the viejitos of the barrio, the little old lady down the street, the grandma, the uncle across the street who had told me the rugged, smooth, 500-year-old stories of La Llorona or El Cucuy, and had declaimed poems in Spanish that were passed down from generation to generation for a century. We were in an act of rebellion against the strict borders between two languages. We were told by the major publishers and by most folks connected with publishing that we needed to avoid any mixing of the languages. Write in one language. Write in one language, they said. I turned that into a poem called Write, with an R, in One Language, whose last verse gleefully declares, there are too many colors in the marketplace to play modest when Mexico and Gloria Rodriguez both say estos gringos con su match, y a mí me gusta mix. There are too many cariños to be created to stay within the lines. Too many times when I want to tell you there is room here for two tongues inside this kiss. We were in protest of anything that would limit, stereotype, or seek to narrowly define our creativity or our potential. Fast forward 50 years, and today we still find stereotypes of who we are, stated clearly from the highest podiums of this nation. We find book bannings again. We are fighting the Ku Klux Klan again. We are trying to diffuse and refuse the imposition of walls and lines and borders between groups again. Still, we live in a world where we are dismissed, all of us, erased, silenced, shrugged at with whatever. But words are not whatever. Words have power. Books, magazines, newspapers, songs have power. The bedtime stories we whisper to children, the stories our children read or hear as they are forming their sense of self and their sense of their own future, the sonnets we sing into lovers' ears, the news reports we scream sometimes with tortured but still stubborn breath have power. And that is why we are banned, we are denied. That is why they attempt to disempower us, to drown us out, to trade us for artificially produced translations untouched by human hearts. Words have power. They are the messenger birds of the human voice, the human spirit. And we, the writers, are the keepers of those words. We feed them and dress them and bring them together in groups and cultivate them and imbue them with our deepest messages to be passed on in every way possible, through lullabies, through fables, through newspapers and magazines, through speeches, through folk sayings and bichos and jokes, through films, through ballads, through whispers, through prayers, and through books. Groups like the TIL and all gatherings and networks and projects of writers, of librarians, of scholars, of students, of shamans, of readers, of healers and blessers, of songwriters seeking to reveal the truth are the proof that in this digital world of sound bites, of so-called artificial intelligence and distorted lenses on reality, the human voice has still not been lost. These awards tonight, and those that have, all of these that have been given, and those that have been given to you in the past, and those that will be given to you in the future, all of them are proof of that. The human voice has power, and that power can liberate people and remind us of our innate and irrepressible equality. The human voice is what we, as writers, seek to document, to reveal, and to honor. I have to thank all of you, my friends who drove through the rain and the flood warnings to get here, my family members who make me so proud to be at Tafolla, Duarte, Sanchez, Moreno, Hernandez, Rodriguez, Marroquin, de Bernal, my high school classmates still putting up with me 55 years after graduation. But especially thank you to my fellow writers whose words and visions are filled with power, who every day and every hour strap on their ammunition of words and build their courage up to create under the names and voices of all our characters and themes, and sometimes with our own names. Gracias. Gracias to all of you. And because we're writers, I'd like to close with two little tiny pieces of literary pieces. One, of course, is going to be poetry. You knew that about me. And the other one is just one line out of children's lit. Because, the way it works, it takes like 3 pages of prose or 10 lines of poetry or 1 line of children's literature to say what we need to say. The first little section here is the last few lines of the poem Porfiria, about the mythical, no-nonsense revolutionary Porfiria in our midst invisibly, and it is dedicated to all of you. Porfiria sat on a few committees, was quiet a lot, occasionally mumbled, and once in a while let loose a ni que pendejos, por qué no? Or even worse, a just plain why. Got criticized for lack of finesse and answered for those soplaneros. I handled too much shit to use a dust rag and furniture polish on it. Shovels work just fine. Porfiria doesn't exist, not in the usual way, has no photograph, social security number, or signature, but Porfiria has just so damn much to say that we will, every one of us, take a picture, invent a number, sign a declaration for her, even if it has to be with our very own names. And the last line, because I want you to keep on writing and speaking and healing the world around us with communication. From Warrior Girl. Because when you write or sing or paint or dance, you know they haven't taken everything away from you. Thank you all.